So thanks for inviting me over.
Hi.
And who are you?
I'm Mitch Grasso. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sliderocket.
And what the heck is Sliderocket? I should give some context. I mean, I've heard about Sliderocket even before I started using it from people who worked at Adobe and other people who are like, this is the coolest Flash app I've ever seen.
Cool.
You know? So
Sliderocket,
tell me what Sliderocket is.
Sliderocket is presentation software, but it goes a little bit beyond, or a lot beyond, what tools like PowerPoint and Keynote kind of start with. Sliderocket is an online presentation software, but it also enables you to kind of partake in this, what we call the ecosystem of presentation services and resources, all these different tools and products that you can pull into your presentation. So we sort of act as the hub of that. So we provide all of the authoring that you'd expect in a desktop application, but we go a lot beyond that with tools like collaboration and sharing and again, this marketplace of community resources.
Well, this show or this interview is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to drive my producer Rocky nuts because I want to get right into your product because it's such a visual, compelling product, and I think it'll bring up some things that we need to talk about. For instance, you can pull things off of Flickr, right?
Sure. You know, the big part of creating presentations is where do you get all these resources and assets to make a great presentation. You know, the best presentations, the ones that most people get excited about, tend not to be, you know, words that are mirroring exactly what people are saying, but they tend to be images or concepts that, you know, convey what you're talking about and sort of, you know, act as a background to sort of help you get your message across. So a big important part is how do you get all that stuff? And it's hard to find resources, it's hard to find images. You know, you can go out and buy stock photography, you can go to Flickr. Sliderocket lets you do that integrated. So I'll just go ahead and I'll create a new presentation here.
So this is a presentation. This looks like PowerPoint so far, right?
Yeah, I mean we've got all the same.
We can create really boring presentations.
Yes, you can create really boring presentations. You can create really great looking presentations. Okay. You know, we try and get you a little bit further along by giving you, you know, more interesting themes and layouts and things that you can use to help you along the way, and then provide all these resources and certain things like being able to play HD video and flash movies or having great charting tools or tables, you know, goes a long way. A plug-in architecture. I can show you some of that stuff.
First, to back up, the basics. Can you create as visually compelling a presentation with a browser as you could with a desktop application like PowerPoint or Keynote?
Absolutely, if not more so. You know, yeah, by taking advantage of Adobe's Flex technology, which is sort of runs in the Flash player, we get all this multimedia, rich media stuff that, you know, is actually difficult to do in tools like PowerPoint. You know, if you can't import Flash into PowerPoint. You can sort of play video now, but it's really large, and you have to sort of be good at it. With Sliderocket, you know, you get all this stuff integrated, and it works really well. And then because we're online and we've got a plug-in architecture, you know, we've got all these people who are extending the functionality, just like you might with Facebook plugins or Photoshop, things like that. Yeah. So you can really create compelling stuff.
I can also, I travel a lot and I watch what people are using on their computers. And first of all, they're using Office a lot, right? You walk down the aisles in an airplane and you see, you know, Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel. And these are tools that many business people have learned over 5, 10, 15 years. And I can just see them turning off right now going, oh man, I'm never going to spend the time to learn a new tool and change my behavior from PowerPoint into a new tool. What would you say to that?
Well, there's two sort of answers to that. One is that, first of all, we've never met anyone who didn't really sort of tell us that, you know, they recognize that, you know, PowerPoint sucks. I mean, that, you know, they weren't really happy with the tool, that it's a necessary evil. A lot of that's the presentations that get created with PowerPoint. You know, Edward Tufte is obviously not a fan of presentations and things like that. But also it's you know, the act of kind of having to suffer through the application. And part of that is, you know, it's gone through, what, 10, 11 revisions, and it's hard to keep an interface kind of, you know, clean and straight to the point when you're trying to be so backwards compatible.
But the thing I was getting at is the evil, you know, is more friendly than something
So we
new.
recognized that early on, and we weren't ever trying to say, you don't need to use PowerPoint. If PowerPoint is a tool that you're comfortable with using, for all means, use it to author. We allow you to import PowerPoint. We allow you to take in those presentations, convert them into Sliderocket presentations, spruce them up, make them look better, put new transitions on them, new themes, animated backgrounds, things like that.
How faithful is the import process?
It's a work in progress, so it's getting better every day. There's an incredible amount of little niddling details in the PowerPoint stuff, but we've got the basics working, and so you can import in those PowerPoints today. Okay. We're not supporting 100% fidelity yet, but we'll get there over the next couple months.
But you can get your PowerPoints in and start.
You get the PowerPoints in, you get the themes in, you get all the assets in, and the fonts and the text and the layout, and it generally is about 90% of what you'd expect for it.
Okay. The other objection I can see is the plain objection is like, well, this is a web browser, therefore I can't work on it offline, and I really need these presentations to work offline because I'm going on a sales call tomorrow, right, and I don't know if I'm going to have an internet connection. I'm in some strange city that I don't even know where the Wi-Fi zones are, right, and I need this thing to work on my laptop, without being connected.
Right. So the great thing about Adobe Flex is that Adobe's got another technology called Air, and Air allows you to basically take Flex applications and run them on the desktop offline. So we've already got today an Air version of our player, so you can cache a presentation and you can present it offline. You don't need an internet connection. You get a little bit better performance. And then over the next year, we'll release an Air version of the editor, so you'll actually be able to work offline on a plane, in a taxi cab, whatever, and then synchronize your presentation back to the web-based version. And,
cool.
And it'll actually really ultimately be the preferred way to work with Sliderocket.
Now, if anybody still is watching, there's a lot of goodness that comes from being an internet-connected app where PowerPoint really has no idea the internet exists, does it?
Right. PowerPoint, first of all, when we were thinking of building Sliderocket, it was important to us that, we don't just recreate PowerPoint for the web, or even just 10% of PowerPoint for the web, which is sort of the tack that a lot of the online applications have taken. It's like, that getting it on the web was enough of a goal, and maybe adding a little bit of collaboration. We wanted to go a lot further beyond that, so we spent a lot of time thinking about where was the value that we could add by moving presentations into the cloud. And it turned out that it was all about sharing, but it wasn't just about sharing, and working, although that's a huge important part of it. It's also about sharing your presentation with other people. It's about sharing other resources that come into it. That sort of flows into our ecosystem, our marketplace, so that you can pull data from Flickr and other different resources into your presentation.
Well, let's tackle that one
first.
Sure. Because that's
making your presentation. Yeah, sure.
Authoring is getting okay, I need to do a presentation tomorrow, and I need some pictures, I need some sales charts, I need some things to make that presentation happen.
So the basic stuff, we've got all the stuff you'd expect to have in a presentation app. We've got text placeholders and layouts. We can do some really nice stuff that's hard to do in other kind of web apps. We can use custom fonts, so you can download any kind of font you want to have in your presentation. You can actually upload your own fonts as well. You can do kind of advanced things like changing leading and kerning and tracking. So you can really have a lot of typography control.
PowerPoint doesn't do that.
Or if it does, it's in really limited ways.
Yeah.
So again, trying to, I come from a design background. A lot of my frustration early on was just PowerPoint as a design tool, that it really was limited in what it let me do, and it sort of forces you down into these directions. And I wanted to allow designers to feel more like they were using an Adobe product or something that they were more comfortable with and not have those restrictions. So we can do all that kind of, boring text stuff. We can change different layouts. You can create your own themes and layouts. You could get a lot more control over that. So if you're in an organization and you want to limit the ability that people have to change to move placeholders or change fonts, you can lock all that stuff down. A big part of Sliderocket was about putting control back into the marketing folks.
So if you work at Eastman Kodak, or Kodak now, they have that yellow color scheme that the corporate identity people have decided on,
right?
And they don't want you to use green or red.
Yeah, they want you to use that. They want to lock down the font.
Orange.
So you can see here we've got these placeholder properties, and these tend to be unlocked in this theme, but you can actually lock them down, which is surprisingly something you can't do in any of the desktop tools. So that if you're creating a theme, you can't really enforce sort of your brand and standards across an organization. So Sliderocket lets you do that. So let's assume we want to bring in, so you were saying a picture or something like that. We'll click on the asset library here, and we can import our own assets, and they can all be keyword filtered, and we can sit there or we can search on them.
Now how did all those assets get on?
These are ones that I uploaded from my desktop.
Okay.
So they were images that I had.
So these assets live up on your servers?
They now live up on the server. They actually live on Amazon S3, but
Okay.
you know, yeah, they live up on the server, and it's sort of like a basically an asset management tool. But what the great thing is that they're shared across your organization.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a company with 2, 3, 100 people, they can all access the same shared library of presentation resources.
That's really cool. You know, at Microsoft, we use PowerPoint a lot, and the only way you could really share, like a chart, for instance, that you saw Bill Gates use in one of his speeches, and you want to use it in yours, you had to go and find that PowerPoint deck using some weird searches on the SharePoint, and find that deck, open up the PowerPoint presentation, and copy that chart out, and then paste it into your PowerPoint deck.
Right. And the most important flaw there is that you literally copied it, and there was no, if Bill Gates went and changed that chart and said, oh, I screwed up Q3 numbers, it didn't update for you. So with Sliderocket, everything's sort of linked back together. So
how does that happen?
Well, okay, we'll jump to that.
Give me a sense of like a chart that's live.
Well,
because this gets to the heart of why an internet connected.
So let's do it with a Google spreadsheet. I don't have it with a chart, but let's add a table to our presentation here. So we've got this table. Now we could go and we could manually sort of type information into it, but instead I've actually got like this Google spreadsheet out here. So here's a Google Docs spreadsheet with a pricing model, and I'm going to go and I'm just going to copy the link out, and then rather than type the information in, I can go and I can just link.
So you just you just click link.
Yeah, and I'm pasting the URL into the table, and it's going to pull that data right in.
Whoa!
And now if the table gets updated, if we update this table, we would be able to see the changes here. So it's sort of a live data flowing into our table. And so we could do this with a chart if we had the right data. Now this is sort of dynamic data being pulled into our presentation. What I was actually just talking about was more about sharing resources within an organization. I don't really have an example of that just for sort of a table, but I do have this library of slides. So imagine I've got a marketing team and he's created, or they've created a bunch of slides for me that they want me to use in my presentation. I can go to this library, I can search, and so here's our go-to-market slide. And I can just drag that into my presentation and close the library. And now that slide is linked back. Yeah. So if this slide is now shared among multiple presentations, and if it gets updated, it'll get updated in all the presentations that use it. And in fact, you can actually set security policies on it so that, for example, if Nat didn't want me to modify the slide, he could make it so it was only read-only for me. I could pull it into my presentation, but I can't edit it. And if Nat decides to edit it down the road, he wants to change some information, those changes will get pushed automatically to me.
Now, let me get that straight. So he created this slide for me, and it's locked down. I copy it, or I put it into my presentation.
Yeah.
And then if he changes a graphic on that, it automatically changes on my slide deck as well?
Yes. So
how does it know that these are linked? Is it
well, that's the beauty of it all being on the web. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
PowerPoint. PowerPoint thinks of presentations as sort of atomic units of slides. We think of presentations as a bunch of slides that are referenceable. So, the presentation doesn't care where the slide comes from. So you can imagine slides being created dynamically, slides being created by different people, and all being pulled into one presentation that really acts as just sort of the order that those slides play back.
Wow.
And
it can be information that's not just human done, like by your coworkers, but also machine done, like the Google.
Yeah, so it can be that slide can have dynamic information on it that's being pulled from an external resource.
What other kinds of dynamic things can you pull in?
Today we have the Google spreadsheets, and we're working with Salesforce.com as well to pull in data from a Salesforce database, so either custom data or the data that's sort of defined by Salesforce. You can also pull in data from an XML feed or an RSS feed. ultimately, we'll be working with sort of professional data providers so that, say, you've got a Gartner report that you want or something from Forrester. You can go and buy that report and flow that information directly into your table. And when Gartner updates the table, say it's market forecast for San Francisco real estate in '08, you know, when that changes, if you're subscribed to that data feed, it could update automatically in your presentation. Yeah. Now, we have to be careful of all that. We don't want stuff updating on people, you know, willy-nilly. So we have controls in place that allow you to, you know, say, well, I don't want the update, or I do want the update, or warn me about the update. You know, so it's not like you're about to walk into a presentation and suddenly your presentation has changed underneath you.
Can you take snapshots of the data as well? Because like with financial information, companies aren't allowed to.
Yeah, you can choose whether the data's live or not. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Because I can see a lot of public companies going, "You're not hooking up to my financial data," because then you know, the next quarter results would start leaking into all these presentations, right?
So back to authoring. I mean, you know, we started this talking about the Flickr. I mean, what's really cool, I'll show you the Flickr thing, but what's really cool about Sliderocket as well is that it's got a plugin architecture. So if, you know, we've got a couple plugins right now. There's some silly ones and there's some practical ones. You allow me to drop like a Yahoo map in, or this one which allows me to search on a quote database. So say I wanted to create sort of an inspirational slide. I can go and I'll just search for a quote on inspiration. Now this is a plugin. It's not built-in functionality. It's actually external. We happen to create it, but a third party could build this as well and then add it to our marketplace, and then you could decide to install this plugin.
So a guy who has a quote, well,
a quote database, or somebody who's just, you know, wants to tie into some other third-party quote database, I mean, that's obviously a specific example, can write a plugin. And plugins can do things like they can add components, they can add features, or they can be things that add effects. Like I can go to this quote that we just pulled in, and I can say I want to add a reflection to it. And I'll drop that on, and I've got a little reflection effect. So now I've got this quote, and it's got a silly reflection on it. If I want to get an image for it, I go to my picture library. Again, if I say I don't have an image in my own sort of library that I know, I can go out and search on the web. So we talked about searching on Flickr. I'll go to Flickr, I'll search for a light bulb to go to with my Edison quote, and boom, immediately I find, you know, Creative Commons stuff. I'm allowed to use it. I'll select this one.
Wait, you just mentioned that. How do you know it's all Creative Commons?
Because Flickr allows us to search on what's only Creative Commons. Wow. So, you know, we can set the licensing stuff.
Explain that, because I'm sure most of the people watching this video know what Creative Commons are, but
well, so technically,
we're talking to a lot of people who have, you know, Office 2003 too, who haven't even been on the internet.
So technically, you shouldn't go to Flickr and just download any old image and use it in your presentation. People are able to mark their images with what's called Creative Commons licensing, and it basically says, you know, how you're allowed to use this image. And most of them are, you know, they require you to do attribution. And so we don't have this in this build, but in the next build, we actually will automatically attribute any images you come. So if you roll over, it'll say who created it and link you back to their Flickr account. So we allow you to search on that, so you just make sure that, you know, you're finding images that you are licensed to use, as opposed to, you know, pictures that people don't want to share.
Very cool.
So I'll go ahead and I'll select this light bulb picture, and it'll drop it in, and I'll just send it to the back. And, you know, we've created kind of this quick and dirty slide, and that's sort of what a lot of what we're trying to do in the authoring is to make it easy for you to create, you know,
beautiful art. I mean, doing that in PowerPoint is really hard. Moving the text even is hard for people.
Well, I mean, again, dropping it in the quote formatted, all ready to go, and then going out to Flickr to find an image to go with it, it makes it a lot easier. It's honestly, there's nothing here that you couldn't do in PowerPoint. It would just take you a lot longer to get it done.
Yeah. What other kinds of things does this tool let you do? Certainly, I've seen some of your slides that have a lot of animation and a lot of interesting effects. Well, here
so we can start, you know, bringing in things like flash animations.
So that's a flash animation that a graphic designer would have created.
Yeah, maybe, you know, or here's another one, you know, like a walking guy. You know, so again, it's very easy to add animation to your slides. We can do transitions and effects like that. So if I go back here, and I'll assign a you know, cube rotate, and I'll go to this one, and I'll put a reflection, and then I can play back that presentation, and I get these really nice transitions that feel like they're coming out of Keynote, just kind of nice stuff. You can play back full screen in the browser. So rather than show the bars and things like that, again, you know, it's not some pseudo full screen. Then we can take this presentation once we've created it, we can share it with people. We can open up the publish setting and we can publish it. And now I could send you a URL and you can view this presentation right from your browser. You can embed it in a website.
Do you have a little widget for embedding it on a blog? Because I don't want a full screen.
Yeah, no, you can do it at whatever size you want. If you go to sliderocket.com, the product tour that we have is a Sliderocket presentation embedded in our website. A lot of people have been embedding them. You can set restrictions on what people can do with the presentation. I can say, I don't want anyone to print this or to share it with or embed it. You know, it's like, I want to send you a link, but I don't want you to share it with anyone else.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is I can track statistics about the presentation. So for any given presentation, I can go to it and I can say, you know, how many times have people viewed this presentation? So this presentation has been viewed 11 times by 5 different people. And I can actually go and I can see how long they looked at each slide. And I can go in and I can dig down and I can see.
Now this is stuff that PowerPoint totally doesn't do.
Just has no way to do it, right?
No.
So that's a big problem with PowerPoint. If you send out a PPT to somebody, it's theirs to do with whatever they want. They can send it to your competitor, they can copy data out of it. You have no control over what they do with it. And you don't even know if they viewed it. With Sliderocket, you know, if you don't want somebody to see the presentation, you can expire it, you can unshare it at any point, you can change the information that they've seen. So if you oops, I sent out a presentation with the wrong data, I can fix it. And you're guaranteed that, you know, you're not going to mistakenly not embed a font or include an image file, things like that. If you want to do a remote meeting with Sliderocket, you know, you can buy WebEx, 50 to 75 bucks a month, or you can just use Sliderocket to do a remote presentation. So I can send you an invitation, I can walk you through the presentation, we keep in sync. I don't do screen sharing, I don't do audio, but you can handle those with other sorts of tools. But I can basically do what's sort of the most common use case, which is present a presentation to you, and it can include video, transitions, audio, things that you can't do with WebEx or GoToMeeting.
I guess we hinted at how much does this cost to use?
So it's Sliderocket software as a service. There's going to be a free version. The free version allows you to be an individual user with a limited number of amount of disk space. Then there's a solo version. The introductory price is going to be $9 a month. That'll get you the ability to work offline, get access to the professional data. And then there's sort of a team and a business version, which are going to cost anywhere from $24 to $42 a month. And those provide collaboration features, which we didn't really cover, you know, being able to work at the same time, sharing and permissions, things like that, professional data feeds.
Wow. Now, before we started, you showed me a book that you printed off of one of these. It's over there.
So we can print from Sliderocket. You can print a presentation. But there's a lot of services out there that'll, and Mimeo is one of them, Mimeo.com, and they'll allow you to send them a document, and they will print X number of copies, bind it beautifully, and then FedEx it out to whomever you want. So that was part of the offering. We're integrating with Mimeo. So as part of our marketplace, you'll be able to print a presentation to Mimeo. Mimeo will print it out, and then you'll be able to leave a hard copy on wherever you go. So it's just kind of closing that loop to the brick and mortar or to the the real world out of the internet. So there's lots of different services that will become part of our marketplace. Things like design services. If you want to hire a designer, rather than them working on the presentation, emailing you a PowerPoint, they'll be able to connect right into your Sliderocket account, work on your stuff. So imagine you're on the way to Chicago, you call up your design firm, can you spruce up that presentation for me? And they're like, yeah, it'll be done by the time you get off the plane. There's nothing for you to have to get in your email. There's no 30 meg PowerPoint file for you to download and worry about. It's just ready to go.
Very cool. Well, is there anything else I need to know about?
Oh, there's so much more. I mean, I don't know we can cover.
We could go for an hour on a demo, obviously. It's really a great product. I've actually used it, so I'm asking a lot of stupid questions to make sure you cover things that I've already used, but it's an awesome product, and people really like the presentations that I did with it. So cool. It has a much more visual feel to it, even for somebody who's not really a hardcore graphic designer, just because of the font control you have. Yeah, no, you can create a really rich looking presentation that's really tough to do in Power. In fact, the guy who creates Bill Gates' presentation, he works in Photoshop most of the time. and does many of his fonts and his graphics in Photoshop, and then imports them into PowerPoint.
Yeah, so authoring was really an important part of it, but we think the real value add is everything beyond that, you know, about the sharing and the distribution and the tracking and the analytics, integration with Salesforce.com, you know, integration with all these other services out there, really making presentations become part of the ecosystem that they are.
Well, thank you for showing it to me.
No problem.